this is Madz Abraham and welcome back to my channel. So I'm back with another video and this time it's again dedicated for clerks or 4th year medical students. So in the past, I've already made the clinical clerkship hacks and must-knows. I've also made the 15 factors that you have to consider in deciding which hospital to choose for your postgraduate internship. So if you haven't watched those two yet, then please check them out. But for this video, we will be talking about the written Revalida. And I really saved this topic for November. Kasi diba January yung exam. So November kasi talaga usually nagsa-start yung pressure na mag-aral. Or kung sobrang sipag mo, siguro ngayon pa lang tapos ka na. And I would first like to thank Nicola Santos for this video suggestion. So now let's start talking about the hardest exam that I had to take in my entire med school life. Or buong buhay ko nga eh. And that is the written Revalida. And for this video, as you can see, diba, I'm wearing my V-neck. And I even placed my nameplate here kahit na hanggang ngayon, hirap na hirap pa rin akong pantayin siya. But I'm wearing this kasi this video is for UST MED students. So for those who are going to take the Revalida next year, in the next 2 years, or basta in the future, I really hope this video helps. So for some schools and programs such as in UST MED, we have both the written and the oral Revalida. I will also make a video on the oral Revalida, pero mauna yung written, so isa-isa lang muna tayo. Focus muna tayo sa written Revalida. The first thing you should know about this exam is that mahirap nga siya. Kaya nga sabi ko, di ba, hardest exam I've ever taken. To the point na akala ko ibabagsak ko talaga siya kasi nga, ang dami ko talaga sobrang hinulaan, mga half or more than half, pero dasal lang talaga. But syempre, let's not focus on the possibility na pwede tayong bumagsak. Instead, isipin natin yung mga dapat gawin para hindi tayo umabot sa point na yun. For the first part, we will be talking about the subject. So the exam is divided into two, the basics and the clinicals. The basic subjects are 11 and these include anatomy, biochemistry and nutrition, physiology, pharmacology, pathology, micropara and ClinPath, community med, medical ethics, ClinEp, radio, and also legal medicine. For the clinicals naman, we have 10. And these are medicine, surgery, OB-GYN, pediatrics, neuroscience and behavioral medicine, ophthalmology, otorhinolaryngology, rehab med, derma, and also anesthesiology. So overall, 21 yung kailangan aralan. Nakaka-overwhelm, diba? Basta when it comes to the subjects and the written Revalida, what you have to know or focus on are these three things. First, yung basic subjects. Next, yung weakness mo ever since the start of time or buong med school. And third, yung hindi mo pa nararotatean na departments. First, why basics? Kasi dahil kaka-third year lang natin na puro clinicals and nagro-rotate tayo sa iba-ibang departments as clerks, majority of what we remember is still the clinical knowledge. In terms of the difficulty in the actual exam, mas nahirapan talaga ako dun sa basics. Kasi yung iba dun nung first year pa yun eh. And also, I can recall na yung mga subjects na onti lang yung point allotment, dun pa ako mas nahirapan talaga. But what I can say is that marami sa mga tinanong nila ng actual exam is yung mga focus din nila nung first to third year pa rin tayo. But not for all kasi there were still some subjects or topics na tinatanong kahit feel mo hindi naman yun yung kailangan alam mo or never mo naman narinig. And sa exam, there are actually a lot of times na napaisip ako, hala, alam ko yung dati, ba't hindi ko na maalala ngayon? So we really have to study smart and to pray really hard na yung mga lumabas, yun lang mga naaral natin. Next would be yung weakness mo. Of course, sa kahit anong bagay naman, kahit hindi sa pag-aaral, dapat nagbibigay ka ng extra time, extra effort para sa weakness mo. Kasi more or less dun sa mga subjects or topics na may alam ka naman or mas strength mo or mas familiar ka, kahit pa paano, may masasagot ka sa exam. Kasi may choices din naman yun eh. Lastly, in terms of the subjects, you also have to focus on subjects or departments na hindi mo pa talaga narotatean during clerkship. That's because, diba, more or less you have naman conferences and also lectures na very high yield talaga. So malaking help talaga yun, especially when you see the actual patients. It allows better correlation and also better retention. Part 2 would be the references. Basically, in preparation for the written Revalida, for me, mas okay talaga gumamit ng mga reviewers kaysa yung actual books when you're just weeks or a few months away from the exam. Pero kunyari, super aga mo nag-start, like kunyari 4 or 6 months before, or baka nga yung summer after third year, nag-aaral ka na, okay lang din naman mag-book. Kasi ang aim mo here would be to be able to cover as much as you could given the time that you have. So the first reference that I advise you to use would be your old personal notes or trances. For me, ito yung pinaka-primary reference and most helpful. Why? Because it will save you time. How? Because your brain is more familiar with it na. Syempre, dahil meron ka ng mga highlights and mga side notes na tinake mo noon, when you read it, you just have to read those things that you already highlighted or that you wrote down on the side. But the thing is, super dami pa rin ng laman ng trances, diba? Kaya nga, I emphasized earlier that you really have to focus on certain things like yung weakness mo. Next reference would be the mga DKA notes. So, thank you to my friend Dean Ang for making all these notes. So, super dami ng subjects na nagawa nito for the first and second year. And also, for sharing it to everybody. What I like about this is that super organized siya, mas concise, tas marami talagang mga tables. I don't know if it works for you, pero sa akin, malaki talagang help yung mga tables pag nagme-memorize. Lalo na kapag mas onti na yung time mo, it would really be helpful. Tapos dito yung mga important info, naka-bold na, naka-red na, tas yung mga relationships, naka-arrow up and down. So, mas fun din siya aralin. It's a must to use this, especially for subjects like Clin Ep, Rev Med, kasi few pages lang yung reviewers, but the must-knows are already there. Next reference would be the BRS or the Board Review Series. They have this for Anatomy, Biochem, Physio, Patho, and Pharma. But the best yield is for Physiology kasi they explain it very well. And some questions, they actually lifted from BRS. If you're really after simple explanations and good sample questions, then super okay yung BRS. Although personally, I kinda regret na hindi ko siya super nagamit before. The next reference would be the Montalbano notes. So this has been very useful for anatomy kasi super Snell-based siya. Tapos it also has pictures from both Snell and Metters. However, studying anatomy, I also suggest that you study the trances or notes from clinical anatomy. Kasi actually, mas clin-ana than gross-ana yung mga questions sa written Revalida. Next reference would be the UST MBR or the mock boards reviewers and exams. These are very helpful especially for basic subjects such as anatomy. Kasi diba, the lecturers here are usually also our professors, so it's very likely na sila rin yung gagawa ng written Revalida exam. Next reference would be the prescribed textbooks. There's a lot, and alam nyo naman kung ano yung mga prescribed textbooks per subject. But personally, hindi ako nasanay na masyado nagbo-book, especially dahil nga super dami nung kailangan aralin in so little time. However, this can be really helpful lalo na kung may mga gusto kang balikan na certain topics, or kung kunyari nung first to third year, talagang lagi ka nagbo-book, nag-highlight, so mas mabilis na lang aralin. The next reference would be the boards in a flash. This was actually made by Dr. Ian Barrido, and thank you very much for sharing this to us. I like this kasi ako talaga yung type of person na mahilig talaga sa flashcards. Kasi it's something so handy, tapos usually it contains the must-knows or the things that you always forget. This reference is quite old pero high yield pa rin siya. It's colorful, tas may mnemonics and may illustrations. If marami ka pang time, you can also make your very own flashcards. Malaking help to dun sa mga times na kunyari tinatamad ka mag-todo-todo aral tapos gusto mo na chill aral lang. Or like yung ginagawa namin sometimes during duty, ginagamit namin ito tapos nagtatanungan kami. Next reference would be the Project R1000. I do not know the author of this file pero thank you so much po. It's quite long, mga 500 plus slides siya. Pero magandang compilation din siya ng mga previous questions and also the must-knows for all the subjects. Next would be the Batch 2020 Exam Rationales. Our batch made compilations of previous comprehensive exams and also written Revalidas. Studying this would be better than just studying a samplex na walang rationale kasi you really have to study about the entire topic, hindi yung correct answer lang. And ang advice ko rin is pag may na-encounter ka na isang item or mga topic na hindi ka masyado familiar or alam mo nakalimutan mo na, go back to the trans, go back to the book, and study it more thoroughly than the other items. The last reference would be old shifting exams because it's a bit more detailed than the yearly comprehensive exams. Since per subject, diba meron usually mga 2 or 4 shifting exams, at you get to grasp more or less kung ano yung pinaka-important. In fact, sabi nga nila, may nauulit usually na mga questions from previous or recent shifting or long exams. So you can ask for copies of these exams from the lower batches. Then of course, you don't just review the answers. I-rationalize nyo ulit yung correct answers and then yung choices and just study kung ano yung mismong topic for the question. Now let's move on to part 3, which is the schedule or the time management. So this would highly depend on saang point and time ka na during your clerkship. But most of the time, as I mentioned kanina, November talaga dumadating yung pressure na mag-aral kasi you only have 2 months left. Now, when preparing for the written Revalida, it's a matter of 2 things. Self-discipline at saka consistency. But I myself cannot say na I did well in these 2 things. Kasi minsan after during duty ng clerkship, meron talaga mga times na pagod ka na or tinatamad ka lang talaga. Lalo na kapag meron kang feeling or thinking na ang layo pa naman, ayoko pa mag-aral. But try to find a way na lang to motivate yourself kasi hard work always pays off. But firstly, regardless of what month ka nag-aaral, I advise you to study your current rotation very well because that will be your main foundation for the clinicals or the part 2. Second, I must say that the most important thing that you have to consider in making your schedule or in managing your time for the preparation is the allotment of points per subject. So this is an example of the points allotment that we had during our time, pero this is not the same for every year. So you have to pay closer attention to those subjects na mas maraming allotted points. So relatively, sila din yung dapat mas matagal mong inaaral. Then look at the items na mas onti yung points, like kunyari yung 3 points. Then more or less, you would have to allot less study time for that. So first, you have to count the number of days left before your written Revalida. So parang countdown yan. Then you have to set yourself, ilang hours ka ba gusto mag-aral per day? And then once you know the number of days and the number of hours, you just try to distribute all the subjects. And then my advice is don't finish them one by one. So, kunyari mag-aaral ka ng basics, is better na kunyari mag-start ka ng 3 topics ng anatomy for this day, and then 3 topics ng physio for tomorrow, and then 3 topics ng biochem for the next day. For me, that is better than finishing anatomy for an entire week before going to the next subject. In that way, sure ka na meron ka namang madadaanan per subject. Hindi yung pagdating ng exam, master mo yung anatomy, pero wala ka talaga alam sa physio. And then, making your schedule, you have to make sure that you have time to go through the samplexes or previous exams. Because you don't want to end up regretting na after ng exam, ikaw lang yung hindi nakapag-samplex. But of course, I'm not advising you to use samplex as your mere reference. Kaya nga, diba, ang dami kong mention before that. And another thing about making your schedule, you have to make sure that you're allotting enough time for praying. Be it in the form of going to mass, praying the rosary, praying novenas. Basta make sure na hindi mo ito makakalimutan. Kumbaga sa schedule mo, kunyari hindi mo nasunod yung 4 hours para mag-aral. Okay lang basta yung 1 hour para sa pagdadasal na sunod mo. Kasi yung exam is very challenging and unpredictable talaga yung mga types of questions that they would ask. So, kailangan mo ng divine intervention. And as I always say, i-pray mo na yung mga lumabas, yung mga naaral mo lang. And for my final tips and advices, I just want to say na hanggat kaya, dapat mag-aral ka. Hanggat may oras ka pa, mag-aral ka. Mag-effort ka talaga so you won't have to regret in the end na hindi mo nabigay yung best mo. And one more thing about studying hard for the written Revalida is that pag nag-effort ka dito, magpe-pay off or maging helpful na rin yun pagdating ng oral Revalida. Why? Kasi doon, syempre yung panelists mo, they will definitely be asking you about the theoreticals and the basics. Surely, hindi ka naman masyadong makakaaral ng basics when you're preparing for the oral Revalida. And another thing is, relatively, malaki yung percentage ng batch na bumabagsak sa written Revalida, unfortunately. But don't lose hope kasi kapag ganun, there would still be a remedial exam 2 weeks after. And if you fail the remedials, which happens very rarely, meron pang tinatawag na OSOE or yung Objective Structured Oral Exam. But again, ngayon pa lang, ang goal natin is yung buong batch ay pumasa. This may be the hardest exam that you have to take in med school, but that just means na you ought to prepare for it with extra time and extra effort. Sacrifice lang talaga and you'll get there. Promise. For the written Revalida, pass or fail naman to eh. So, lagi pag-pray mo lang na umabot ka sa passing score. And most of all, you have to pray for your entire batch and you have to help each other out. Kasi trust me, iba talaga yung feeling na yung buong subsect mo or yung buong class or buong batch nga is pumasa as compared to ikaw lang. So, leave no one behind, okay? Now, that is it for this video and I hope that you find it helpful or that you would find it helpful when it's your turn to take your written Revalida. If you want a video about the oral Revalida naman, then wait lang guys, I would post it after the written Revalida. So focus muna kayo and mag-aral muna kayo ng written Revalida. Thank you very much guys for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to my channel and also just comment down below if you have other suggestions for my next vlogs.